What if Jesus had children? What if his bloodline didn't end at the cross, but was carried in secret through history, protected by kings, hidden by knights, and hunted by the church? What if the Holy Grail wasn't a cup, but a living, breathing family line that still exists today? You've heard pieces of this story in books, in movies, but beneath the fiction lies something older and far stranger. A royal family erased from history, a secret written not in ink, but in blood. And now, after centuries of silence, the story is whispering again. This isn't just a tale, it's a mystery that stretches across empires, churches, and graves, and it beckons, as many secrets do, with a death. The year was 679. In a forest in the Ardennes, a king named Dagobert II was murdered. Some say it was a spear, others a knife, but all agree on one thing. Dagobert was the last fully independent king of a line called the Merovingian. Once he fell, a new age began, one ruled by men far more loyal to the growing power of the church. Why? Because the Merovingians claimed something extraordinary. They didn't just say they were royalty. They claimed to be descended from something sacred, a bloodline stretching back not just to ancient kings, but to Galilee itself, to a carpenter, and to a woman with red hair fleeing by boat, her belly full of prophecy. It sounds impossible, but history often hides its biggest truths by making them sound like madness. The Merovingians ruled much of what is now France and Germany. Their kings were unlike any other. They never cut their hair, believing it held spiritual power. They were seen as God-chosen semi-divine beings. And then, suddenly, they were gone. Not with a bang, but a rest quietly removed from power, their names scrubbed from records, their tombs hidden. In their place came a new dynasty, the Carolingians, the family of Charlemagne, dynasty the church wanted. So, the question is, why did the church try so hard to make us forget the Merovingians? Some say they were heretics, others say they were too independent, but the most dangerous theory is that they were removed, not for what they did, but for who they were. And perhaps for who they still might be, because blood doesn't vanish. It flows through centuries, and maybe through someone alive today. Let's go back to that forest. King Dagobert II, on a hunting, tripisilated, betrayed. After his death, something strange happened. History just stopped talking about him. And even stranger, it stopped talking about his family. Dagobert had a son, Sigebert, the rightful heir, but he never became king. No ceremony, no fight for the throne. He just disappeared from history. Some say he fled south to France. Others claim monks hid him. A few whisper that his descendants still live in a mountain village even today. It feels like a Dagobert was son Tijosteni, king he was the last of a kind. His family believed their right to rule came from divine birth, not from the church. And a king who doesn't need the church is a dangerous king. Of course, there's no proof that Jesus had children. The Standard Bible is silent. But older texts, like the Gospel of Philip, speak of Mary Magdalene as Jesus' companion, a word that can also mean wife. The idea persisted especially in southern France, far from Rome's reach. If the Merovingians believed they were descended from Christ, then Dagobert's assassination wasn't just political, it was theological. A crime meant to bury a divine legacy. In the 20th century, strange documents appeared in a French library, the Priory of Sion papers. They claimed Dagobert's bloodline survived, protected by a secret society. Many called them a hoax, but they contained details that were surprisingly accurate, long before this story became popular. So we must ask, if there was nothing to hide, why erase Dagobert so completely? The silence around him doesn't feel accidental. It feels deliberate. The Merovingians were called the long-haired kings. Their hair was their power. To cut it was to strip them of their right to rule. Their kings had prophetic dreams and healing touch. They were living relic symbols of divine rule. So why weren't they simply killed off? Why quietly tucked away in monasteries? Their memories slowly erased. Perhaps because the church didn't see them as obsolete rulers, but as rivals. If they truly were descended from Jesus, Their very existence threatened Christian doctrine itself. Christianity is built on divine sacrifice, but a Jesus who left a family, that's a Jesus rooted in blood, not just spirit. And that would make the Merovingians living heresy. Now let's talk about a physical mystery, the Basilica of Saint Denis, near Paris, the resting place of nearly every French king. But Dagobert II's tomb is missing. His grandfather's is there, but not his. There are whispers. A monk in the 9th century wrote that Dagobert was a saint, unjustly martyred, buried at a church in St. For a time, he was venerated there. But then, that too was quietly forgotten. The church discouraged it. The cult of Saint Dagobert vanished. Some accounts say bones were found there, a king, a woman, and a child. Their identities never confirmed. Rumors speak of a scroll with Hebrew writing, nothing verified. Why hasn't this been investigated? Officially, the chambers under the church are too unstable. But since when has that ever stopped us from digging into history? What if something lies beneath that was meant to stay buried? Even Napoleon seemed obsessed. He visited St. Denis and later adopted the Merovingian symbol of the bee, covering his empire with it. He claimed it symbolized industry, but maybe it was something else, a nod to the oldest royal bloodline of France. So we have a king erased, a saint forgotten, a tomb missing. His presence lingers not in the records, but in the silence. Now, let's move to the Knights Templar. Warrior monks, powerful, wealthy, mysterious. But what were they really guarding? After establishing themselves on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, they spent years digging beneath it. What were they looking for? Some believe they found proof of the sacred bloodline genealogies, evidence, relics. After returning to Europe, they changed, growing richer, building strange churches filled with hidden geometry, and then they were destroyed. On Friday the 13th, 1307, the King of France arrested and tortured them, accusing them of heresy. Under torture, some confessed to worshipping a mysterious head was Eton idol, or a relic, a reminder of the bloodline they protected. Their vast treasure was never found. Had they hidden it to keep their secrets safe? Maybe the Templars were more than soldiers. Maybe they were archivist guardians of a truth that threatened the church. Now we reach the biggest idea of all, the Holy Grail. We think of it as a cup. But what if it was never a cup at all? What if the Grail was a person? Old stories often describe the Grail as being carried by a woman, sometimes pregnant. The word Grail may come from sangreal, royal blood. What if the Grail quest was never about finding an object, but finding a lineage of the living bloodline of Christ? If the Grail is a bloodline, it can't be hidden in a vault. It lives in people. That's why the church worked so hard to diminish Mary Magdalene, branding her a prostitute. If she was the mother of that lineage, her power had to be erased. This theory changes everything. The Grail isn't a chalice, it's a legacy. A code of blood. In the 19th century, a poor French priest named Berenger Saunier suddenly became rich. He renovated his church in Rennes-le-Château with bizarre skulls, Latin phrases like "this place is terrible." He built a tower, entertained nobles, spent lavishly with no explanation. When asked, he said the money came from donations, but no record ever proved it. The legend says that during renovation, he found parchments hidden inside a pillar containing secret genealogies and a map. On her deathbed, his housekeeper whispered, "The secret is so big, people would never believe it." The secret was Saint-Eustache. Or maybe it still lies beneath that church. The church has always been an expert at managing memory. It doesn't destroy ideas, it buries them. After the Merovingians fell, church-approved chronicles simply stopped mentioning them. It was a deal. Erase the bloodline, and in return the new kings would serve the church. The Merovingian symbol was the bee, representing resurrection and immortality. When their dynasty vanished, the symbol disappeared for 1,000 years, until Napoleon revived it. Coincidence or tribute? Symbols outlive kings. They speak in silence, carved into stone and woven into robes. And what of Mary Magdalene? In southern France, legends say she arrived by boat after the crucifixion, carrying a child. She lived in a cave. Her skull is still venerated today. Early chapels depict her not as a sinner, but as a noble woman with a child. The claim is clear. She brought a bloodline to France, a lineage that became the Merovingians. Where's the proof? If it exists, it's likely hidden in the most secret vault on earth, the Vatican archives. Miles of locked shelves, guarded from public view. Historians have found mysterious gaps in the records, especially around the fall of the Merovingian. What if those missing files contain the truth? This story has drawn the attention of powerful people for centuries. Even the Nazis searched for the Holy Grail, twisting it into a weapon for ideology. They scoured Rennes-le Chateau, believing it held proof of divine blood. And maybe, when the Templars vanished, some fled to Scotland. There, the Sinclair family built Rosslyn Chapel covered in mysterious carvings, including plants from America, long before Columbus. Was Rosslyn a refuge for the bloodline? Now, in our digital age, the search continues through data, archives, and code. Artificial intelligence scans ancient texts, hunting patterns no human could see. So, what do we really know? We know the Merovingians were real. We know they were erased under suspicious circumstances. We know this story of a sacred bloodline has survived 1,000 years, protected by some, suppressed by others. We can't prove that Jesus had children, but we can ask, why won't this story die? If it were only myth, why has it been guarded, encrypted, and fought over for so long? Maybe the truth was never meant to be proven, only preserved. The bees, the long hair, the missing tombs there, not just symbols. They're fragments of a code whispering that the divine might not be above us but within us. The search for the Merovingian bloodline isn't just a hunt for treasure. It's a question about history itself, about power, about fate, and about the possibility that the greatest secret of all was never lost, only hidden in plain sight.